All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about some big ideas today: power, propaganda, even empire building. But you know what's funny? Our story doesn't kick off on some epic battlefield or in a grand throne room. Nope, it all starts with a piece of underwear. This quote from Horace Walpole just nails it. It paints this almost larger than life picture of Queen Elizabeth I. And what's holding that whole commanding image together? Literally, the farthingale. And this is the image he's talking about. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of her. She's not just wearing a dress, is she? She's occupying space. She's projecting this aura of untouchable majesty. It's like it's an architecture of power, and it's all built on a totally hidden foundation. So that's the big question we're diving into. How on earth did this one garment, this hooped underskirt, go from being a weird court curiosity to a full-blown political weapon? A tool that literally helped shape the image of one of the most famous queens who ever lived.
Well, to really get it, we have to go back to the beginning, back to its origins in Spain, where the farthingale started its life not as a symbol of power, but of, well, scandal.
The clue's actually right there in the name. The Spanish called it a verdugado, which comes from the word verdugo, and that means a green, bendy piece of wood. And that's exactly what they first used to make the hoops that gave the skirt its crazy, dramatic shape. And yeah, when it first showed up at court, it was instantly controversial. Joan of Portugal, who had a bit of a reputation, was rumored to be using the super wide skirt to hide an illegitimate pregnancy. The style eventually made its way to England with Catherine of Aragon, but it didn't really take off until Wilbone replaced the wood. That's when the shapes could get even more extreme. So, how did this controversial Spanish fashion become an English obsession? Well, what started out as this foreign curiosity pretty quickly turned into an absolutely essential and massive status symbol at the Tudor court. I mean, just think about that for a second. The politics of just space. Can you imagine a room so packed with these giant skirts that there's literally no space left on the benches? This was way more than just fashion. It was a woman's way of physically taking up more room in what was, let's be honest, a man's world. It was about demanding to be seen. And the style changed a lot. The original Spanish version gave you that stiff, A-line, cone-shaped look. But the English court ended up going for the French style, which was this wide, wheel-like structure that sat right at the hips. It created this huge, flat tabletop for showing off incredibly expensive fabrics and jewels. It was less a skirt and more like a walking display case. And believe me, no one understood the power of that display better than Queen Elizabeth I. She didn't just wear the farthingale, she weaponized it. She used it to build an image of a monarch who was somehow both woman and king. And this slide just shows it perfectly. On the left, you've got her dad, Henry VIII, all broad shoulders and aggressive stance, pure masculine power. Elizabeth couldn't copy that, so what did she do? She created her own version, using the farthingale to build an equally intimidating but totally female silhouette of power. She was a genius at mixing these gender signals. On top of this hyper-feminine, super-wide skirt, she'd wear tops with masculine details, like military-style braids or buttons, which were usually just for men's clothes. The message was unmistakable. I may have the body of a woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. Okay, so all of this leads to what is probably the single most effective piece of political propaganda in English history, the Armada portrait. Seriously, every single detail in this painting is a calculated message. So let's break this down real quick. Her hand is on a globe, basically claiming the Americas for England. The endless strings of pearls, that's all about purity, reinforcing our whole virgin queen thing. The crown is there to remind you of her divine right to rule. And in the background, the Spanish fleet is getting wrecked in a storm while English ships sail on calm seas. It's a total victory story, and she's at the center of it all, with her ruff looking kinda like a saint's halo. And you gotta remember, this wasn't about just picking what you wanted to wear. Oh no. There were actual laws, called sumptuary laws, that spelled out exactly who could wear what fabric. So all those acres of silk and gold thread on her farthingale, that wasn't just her showing off. It was a legally protected right, a visual statement that screamed, I am in a league of my own. But creating this look, wow, it was a serious feat of engineering.
We think of it as just a dress, but really it was this complex, multi-layered structure. So, a noblewoman would start with a linen smock, for hygiene, then a petticoat. Then came the main event, the farthingale itself, that rigid cage. Over that, she'd wear something called a kirtle, which was like a supportive bodice and skirt. And then, finally, the magnificent outer gown. It was basically a construction project every single morning. And just think about the hardware involved. Get this. That number, 13,500, that's how many Farthingale pins were ordered for just one royal wardrobe. These were special pins needed just to hold the whalebone supports in place and pin those heavy gowns onto the structure. Insane, right? And the whole idea even spread to the arms. To balance out that massive skirt, women started wearing farthingale sleeves. Yup, separate, wide sleeves built on their own little whalebone frames to create a matching, powerful shape from shoulder to hip. And this isn't just dusty old history either. Incredibly, a surviving farthingale sleeve from this exact period was recently discovered. It's this amazing, tangible link back to the women who were building these elaborate shapes 400 years ago. Which kind of brings us to a final thought, right? The farthingale itself, well, it's long gone. But the idea behind it, it's definitely still around. Think about it. The power suit, designer logos, you name it. We still use our clothes like architecture, right? To build an image, to take up space, to tell the world who we are, or maybe who we want to be. The materials are different, for sure, but that language of power, it's still being spoken. So I guess the question is, what's your farthingale?